Hello, everyone. No surprise, the government has survived the motion of no confidence. Now, of course, it's all pretty much theatre. We all pretty much knew that it wouldn't go through unless Fianna Fáil, Fianna Gael backbenchers rebelled. But the simple truth is, and the simple reality is of a lot of these TDs and senators, and the same with councillors, etc., when they get into their jobs, the two have too much of a cushy number, and they're too afraid to lose their salary and lose the position in their parties, and that's as simple as that. But you would take people like Willie O'Deed and stuff like that only has maybe a few years left in the Dáil. He's been there since the Dáil probably was nearly founded, to be totally honest with Willie O'Deed. But people like him and Fianna Fáil, you think he would say, to hell with it, what do I need the money? In a few years' time, I be leaving the Dáil, what do I need the money for? You think he would say, I should stand up with the people of Limerick, or I should stand up with the people of Ireland. None of them ever, no Fianna Fáil, no Fianna Gael, they said, we probably should stand up for the people here instead of standing up for the party. But not one of them decided to speak up and say, no, we won't listen to Micheál Martin, we have enough of this crack. And rebel against the party. None of them decided to do it. You think some of them would. You think some of them would have a backbone and do it. Because, as I say, Willie O'Deed, he has a few more years left in the Dáil. Same with a good few of them there. The majority of them are pushing the pen. They're near 70. They're getting on. And some of them are nearly going probably on 80. And what did they need the money? What money seems to be their god, but you think they would say we should stand up for the people, we should stand up for what's right. None of them can spin it that it was a perfect success and stuff because they wanted to bring in the army to shut people down. And of course, there was chaos for the last few days in the country. There still is chaos in the country because people are not happy about to 10 cents. Keep the 10 cents, the government basically said. Instead of 3 cents, we give you 10 cents. Isn't it great? They're great people, aren't they, the government? But yeah, people are delighted, to put it nicely. Not so much. But the government would want you to take that. But, they can't really sum it up anyway because it's just a total disaster. Whatever way they look at it, it's just a total disaster in every regard. And it's a miracle how any of them have any confidence in anything. I'm sure the majority of the backbenchers of Fianna Fáil and Fianna Gael don't. But it's even worse, and I talk about Mikey Healy now in a sec, but it's even worse than Michael Lowry and his independence basically voted confidence in the government. Like, are they well? Are they well? I know Michael Lowry, he's a bit of a he might as well join Fine Gael at this stage. He was a Fine Gael. We all know about the Manhattan Tribunal. He shouldn't probably be there. Nobody should have voted for him, but he shouldn't be there. But he's there anyway. But yeah, Danny Healy has voted against the government, and Micah Healy voted against the government, meaning their agreement with the government basically is out the window. So basically, Micah Healy was going to be kicked out anyway. So he was signed anyway. In fairness, he did do it. And he's right to do so because he knows rightly probably he's done for in Kerry. The same with Danny. The two of them are probably done for because they should have probably done this at the beginning. They should have stood with the people from the very beginning. They were all very quiet when this was happening and didn't hear much from Maggie Healy at all. And they're farmers themselves. You think they'd be up in arms. You think they'd be leading the charge, but they're only leading the charge from now when the thing is pretty much nearly over. There were no to be found the first day, the second day. There were nowhere to be found anywhere. But at least in fairness, they done the right thing at the end. In the end, they did. We will say that, but he should get rid of your contracts with the government because that we still remember that, Micah. We watched to get rid of them contracts, millions of euro worth of contracts, abusing, basically taking money, housing refugees instead of housing homeless people. There's many people in Kerry who have homes, etc. You probably should be more worried about them than people from Timbuktu, because again, they're worth more money, of course, to Mikey Healy and to the people, landlords, etc. But this is the thing. That I don't know what's going to make these backpackers, or even only people in Fianna Fáil, Fianna Gael TDs, Fianna Gael senators, or Fianna Fáil senators. I don't know what's going to make them ever say to themselves, maybe we're doing wrong here. And a lot of them do know it. A lot of them do know it. They do know it, but they're just too afraid to speak out. They're too afraid of losing the position of Fianna Fáil. They're too afraid to lose their money. Above all else is the money. That's what guides them. If the money was taken off them, they'll be all up in arms in 5 minutes. But I don't know what takes them. Like Micheál Martin could go and shoot 3 or 4 people in the street tomorrow morning. They still would back him. Like that's what I mean to say. Like in broad daylight, Micheál Martin would just go out and shoot 3 or 4 people in the middle of the street, and they still would back him, even though there's video evidence. It's all online, etc. They still would sit in the Dáil and say, "Yep, Micheál Martin's great." Just because they're afraid of losing the positions. As I say, but people like Willie O'Dean, you think it would be totally honest, if I got to say 70 or 80 or whatever, I stopped giving a shit. To be totally honest, I would stop giving a shit in life because you only have maybe another 10, 20 years, 30 years maybe at most. Like, why the fuck do you care about the party or being basically falling in line for the party. Like, why the fuck would you care? In my opinion, that's what I would be like. Why the fuck would I care about falling in with the party, etc.? I would fucking say whatever I felt like. And that's the problem. There's too many. And again, majority of politicians do change. I've often heard politicians, I'm going to fight the establishment. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Good example was Kieran Mullooney. He went off to the European Union, joined Fianna Fáil's group, and I haven't heard much really from him. You'd think he'd be banging down Ursula von der Leyen's door saying, "Where's the money for the Irish people? Give us the money." But no, he won't. You hear him every once in a while, but then he goes quiet, and then there's nothing to say. Because you think he would be barging down the doors of Brussels, give us our money back, give us our sovereignty back, but crickets, you hear from you hear maybe every once in a while he quicks, but apart from that, you never hear much from Kieran Mullooney. Thankfully, I was in Finland at the time because I would have probably given number one the fool if I was here. But yeah, he betrayed the people. He betrayed by going off and joining Fianna Fáil. We're going to fight the establishment and join Fianna Fáil's group. It's insane. But yeah, no, it's the same with everything. But it's just money and power, and that's all. The politicians, and I don't know if it's just sense of greed or sense of entitlement, because again, when you're a politician or councillor and stuff, I think you have too much of a big head on you. A lot of these politicians have big head on them. I think they're God, to be generally honest, that's what they generally take. And you kind of do need a big head on you to become a politician and stuff like that. You need to have a lot of fucking wind up your arse, let's put it that way, to be a politician, because you have the confidence in yourself and stuff, and it's difficult, but I think just the greed and money gets to you. It's about that, and that's the problem with a lot of these people. Because the government should have had, in any sane country, the government would have collapsed. The government would have collapsed the second day of this. But it just goes to show you this country is rotten. The whole system, everything about it is just rotten. It's not just the political parties again. The majority of political parties are rotten to the core. They should be got rid of. There's no addition to anybody. But the whole system itself is rotten. Like, the whole system itself is just totally rotten to the core. In every regard, and it's just gonna. I don't know what you can do to get rid of that system, because it's just so entrenched. You would nearly have to, I don't know, knock the whole system down and rebuild it from the ground up. But yeah, no surprise it survived the motion and no confidence. Anybody could have told you they were going to get the confidence. I kind of seen Michael Healy-Rae doing it to be done in St. Annie, because they kind of had to, because the people of Kerry were very, very angry. And they wouldn't get in next election. They would be fucking destroyed. And they probably will be destroyed next election. Maybe they might have saved themselves. But in a lot of cases, they're not. They're not going to save themselves in this case. And a lot of rural Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael TDs are going to suffer. They're going to suffer in the next election. And I say that straight. Like, people like Robert Troy, etc., is going to suffer dearly in Westmeath. He will, because they're rural counties, so they rely on farmers pretty much, and truck drivers. Not so much maybe in Dublin, they wouldn't give a damn about farmers and stuff in Cork City Centre and stuff. But in rural Ireland, they're going to be destroyed. Like, they're going back to the constituents and saying, "Oh yeah, well, I supported the government." Like, that's not going to go down well for you. It's simple as that. And I say that to Robert Troy in the West Ham. Even though Robert Troy was off on a pond over the last few days, it seems, in America. But look, might as well. We all might as well. But yeah, the whole system is rotten. There's no surprise. Like, there's no way the government will ever lose the confidence of the Dáil, because they have the numbers, and there's too much fucking cowards in the political parties, etc. Like, you take 3 or 4 Fianna Fáil TDs or Fine Gael TDs who rebel and say, "Fuck this shit, I'm going to rebel." Then have enough of it all, because them TDs, if they did do it, say for example, if Willie O'D did do it, he'd be guaranteed to keep his seat for life. If you just said to Fianna Fáil, stick your stuff up your ass, Micheál Martin. Like, something like that, even if they stood up and said, "No, I won't be a part of this," and just walk out. But none of them were willing. None of them stood up and said no. It's a hard word to say, but it's a tough word, but it has to be said, because the country has been worn into the ground. As simple as that. And a lot of them, and again, silence is complicity, and that's the really simple truth. That silence is, in a lot of this case, particularly now, where the stage of the country is at, with these protests and other stuff. It's complicity pretty much to sit. Like, you're nearly worse than the people talking, Micheál Martin, Simon Howes, etc., because you're sitting there and saying nothing. You're watching everything that's going on. You know that's wrong, and you can see they're doing wrong, etc., but you won't say anything. But anyway, let me know what you think. Subscribe for more. Bye.